Greetings, greetings, greetings. It is I, your friendly neighborhood thought criminal, the everyday skeptic, whatever label I feel like taking on upon my heavy shoulders today. I'm going to talk about Sargon of Akkad and ThunderFOOT. I'm going to weigh in a little bit on that because I think there's some really important lessons and a little bit of wisdom that can come out of this situation. If you're not fully aware of it, I'll explain it, but let me give interject a little bit of a preamble. Is that I didn't really want to engage in this kind of drama. I didn't really want to make this particular video, but I feel kind of compelled to make it because I think there's such a good learning opportunity here. And it's just so distracting to me, some of the thoughts about it. I'm really trying hard to finish a book right now, but and this is like such a distraction, and I know I'm going to want to check comments and interact with anyone who's watching this and get your thoughts on it. And that's going to be a distraction, and I just have to live with that because it's going to be more distracting for me to have this on my mind and not talk about it. So if you're not aware of what happened, basically ThunderFOOT, who is a pretty well-known YouTuber who does a number of different kinds of videos, he rose to sort of prominence doing a series of videos called Why Do People Laugh at Creationists that was just sort of attacking and debunking the young earth creationist sort of position, and it was very effective. And that's actually when this was years ago, that is how I actually knew ThunderFOOT, was originally through those particular videos. And I was pointed to those videos by Shane Killian, who's a YouTuber I've subscribed to for a long time. And if I know he watches, occasionally he watches some of my videos. So if you're watching, thank you for that. He's actually, I don't usually go and recommend a lot of channels. He's a channel that I've watched for a long time, especially his Bogosity videos, which definitely got me interested in skepticism again, or got me to go back and think about my roots, my academic roots, studying philosophy and things like that, and kind of want to bring some of that into the channel. So if you're watching, Shane, thank you. So he's the guy who basically pointed me to ThunderFOOT years ago, and I enjoyed that series. Why do people laugh at creationists? And then ThunderFOOT from there went on to basically attack Anita Sarkeesian like relentlessly, and he had a series called Why Do People Hate Feminists, I think is what it was called. And what happened really recently is that he made a video about I'm leaving the skeptic community, even though I'm not aware if there's a skeptic community, if that's like a thing, but anyway, he's like, I want to not be associated with people in the skeptic community. And he referenced this live stream that Sargon of Akkad was on, where people were making a bunch of really dark jokes about I think I'm trying to remember the YouTuber's name. I think it was Russian Deadpool, this male feminist YouTuber who, I don't know, he had some sort of psychic break due to drug use or something else like that, and he actually killed his co-host. He killed his girlfriend, and that was kind of like a big story. And for me, I'll talk about specifics in a minute, but that's the situation. Sargon responded to that. And Sargon, and he's another channel that I actually watch quite a bit of, is Sargon of Akkad, for his sort of political commentary and his political breakdown. He doesn't share my political views, but he's always pretty well researched, and he's always got a lot of ability to take apart sophistry and sort of show you presentations of unreality in politics, which I think is very valuable. Now he responded to that, basically showing how ThunderFOOT had, basically used the narrative. We talked about the narrative device. ThunderFOOT had told a narrative and dropped in little bits of this audio live stream to support the narrative that he wanted about, I don't know, the evil of the alt-right or something like that, including Sargon of Akkad, and actually did a couple of what I would consider misleading edits of that in order to make it sound like Sargon was laughing at a particular dark joke that he wasn't laughing, or that he made these particular kinds of dark humor jokes. And it's cast an interesting light on ThunderFOOT, and I kind of want to dig into that because there's some really good lessons to be learned. And before I start looking, I'm going to show you some of ThunderFOOT's tweets and some of the significance they'll have in the context of this particular little drama situation. And of course, if you don't know who either of these YouTubers are, then it probably is not going to matter to you. Maybe you can learn the lesson through my telling of this narrative, and maybe you don't need to learn this lesson. And hopefully you've learned this lesson well enough that you don't need to learn what I'm gonna present to you now. For as far as dark humor goes, I'm just gonna tell you about myself that there's pretty much no humor that's too dark for me. I am a pretty dark guy, and you may not get it a whole lot on the channel because I keep it kind of clean. I don't cuss a lot on the channel. There's some reasons that I don't cuss a lot, and it's mainly because if you overuse a word, then it starts to lose some of its power. So I kind of want to say, I have this feeling, I want to save the cuss words when they really matter. But I definitely have a dark side to my humor. If you guys know Matt Wellman, the guy who I do Riders at the Dawn with, we wrote a screenplay years ago that we got it back from a producer, and he basically told us that there was no way, that we had to rewrite it. There was no way it could be rated R. It was too dark and it was too disgusting. The comedy was, because it's one of the funniest things I've read in a screenplay, but there's no way you can make this movie. It's way too dark. And that was our starting point for humor. And when we tried to write PG-13, then it ended up being like a hard R. So we tend to be pretty dark. So for me, none of this is offensive at all. I don't care about dark humor, and I don't care about jokes done in bad taste. None of that offends me. And I'm a rabid free speech supporter. So I don't believe there's any actual limits to free speech. I think the proper way to view free speech is that the consequences of your speech you are responsible for. So if you tell a lie and that causes somebody to do something, you're responsible for the action of telling a lie. So there's no actual limits to free speech. Just let me say that as well. So part of this interchange, and I'm just going to show you ThunderFOOT's his Twitter feed, and show you some of those tweets and break down kind of what's happening and the sort of sad little, points we end up on. So here's his YouTube. Here's his Twitter. At the top is this: ThunderFOOT should stick to science because Sargon of Akkad is better at politics. Sargon of Akkad is better at politics, not for predicting election results, because that's not actually being good at being good at politics, but understanding political theory and how political movements interact and work, and what ideas are presented, and whether those ideas are valid, and who's using sophistry and that sort of stuff. And Sargon of Akkad's pretty good at it. He's pretty well practiced, and he takes it pretty seriously and really tries to thoroughly cite everything that he happens to say. That's what makes him good at politics, not where he predicts one particular election. Now, this is also cherry picking. This is because he's leaving off, Brexit, Donald Trump, other things. His correct predictions in the Netherlands prime minister elections. So he's leaving out all the things he got right, and says, I think Le Pen will win, and this also may not have come out before, the runoff. So that's, we're already dealing with like some cherry picking here. And there's no way that you can have the proper amount of context to judge whether somebody understands politics from this little infographic. So that's one thing that you should definitely be aware of. Then let's just go down the list here. I've lost over 1% of my subscribers. I don't know how I will go on. That still can be significant, because those things can roll downhill, and that could be, even though you may have someone who hasn't unsubscribed. This is not really what I'm part of the lesson, but even though you might have someone who's unsubscribed, you might have more people that just choose not to click on your videos anymore, which has a bigger impact. I criticized your sacred cows. So there's a narrative where you're placing upon the other person. I used to come to you for your logical and well thought out points. What happened to you? I criticized your sacred cows. So you're putting on somebody else what's called a false motivation. And I actually have made a video on this where you're saying, you're only saying this because you hate women, or whatever the motivation is. You're only saying that because I criticized your sacred cows. I don't have to respond to your criticism. Although this is a pretty general criticism, he just chose it because then it's a way for him to tell his specific narrative, which is that people are upset with him because he treaded over some tribal line and offended people that are within the skeptic tribe, rather than he actually committed, work of intellectual dishonesty. We'll just put it that way. And then he says, yep, pretty much what he says. We'll skip this one because this involves whether he's basically trying to say he didn't. Okay. We'll just look at this one. Pretty much what he says. This is a bit of what we might call like a paraphrasing fallacy, where you paraphrase something and leave out critical information and critical context to understand what somebody's saying. Give us a raw uncut clip in the stream where they say this is feminism's fault or something similar. Pretty much what he says. Then it's not what he says. You're generalizing what he says, so he didn't say that. It's pretty much what he says, which means I'm going to assign the meaning to something else he said, which is a type of fallacy, right? Let's keep going. Your response is exactly what the atheist community said when I first criticized feminism. How things repeat themselves. So again, this is another false motivation. It's saying you're just like this other person before. I don't have to respond to any kind of criticisms, or I don't have to listen to what you have to say. If someone says you should really stop because I think it's damaging your reputation, it's like, that's just what they said before. And it's like, okay, well that isn't taking what I said into consideration or why I might have said that. If we keep going down, not only did Sargon of Akkad copy the title of an SJW video, but most of their talking points too. It's not really true, but ThunderFOOT has these busted titles that go on. And that's what Sargon of Akkad did, is he titled it after those. I don't know if he's missing the point or intentionally misrepresenting the point. There's no edit. There's no time reference. You can look at that one yourselves. Okay, and here's actually a really big one that, and this is like the heart of the lesson is up in this one right here. I watched the videos. You edited 2 separate parts together that were more than 10 minutes apart. I don't know why you don't just apologize. You were caught. What, you mean like in every Sarkeesian video I ever made? Where was your outrage then? It's called video editing. So this is an extremely interesting admission, because what he's basically admitting is that he does the same sort of deceptive editing for Anita Sarkeesian. And what that should really mean to you is that if you were upset with the way he treated Sargon of Akkad, you might be gaining empathy for his enemy, Anita Sarkeesian. And indeed, I will tell you how well before this started actually gaining empathy for her because of the way that ThunderFOOT was actually engaging in quite a bit of sophistry and quite a bit of like assassination stuff. And I really don't like Anita Sarkeesian, but I don't know, if somebody's treated unfairly, I tend to have empathy for them. It's like some kind of like weird natural response. So this is a big one. This is kind of a kind of fallacy where it says, you didn't object to the first bad thing I did. This thing is the same as that other bad thing. Therefore, you can't object now. Which is to say, if I didn't object to the first thing and I object to the second thing, it could be because I've come to a proper realization that the thing you're doing is wrong. And the big lesson here is that often, if you have a particular perspective, you're more than happy to hear somebody use sophistry to prove a point that you agree with, because it's furthering your ends through bad means. And only when that person only when this is turned against you, do you start to realize that the means being used were bad and you should have objected all along. And that's really, I guess that's like the heart of the lesson that I really want to communicate here, is that I made a video a while back called The Enemy of My Enemy about Donald Trump, and about why you should vote for Donald Trump as opposed to voting for a third-party candidate, because it doesn't do anything, right? In a presidential election, at least. In a local election, that's a different story. But it's one of those things where if you make a friend of your enemy, if the enemy of your enemy is your friend, which is, Anita Sarkeesian's the enemy, feminism's the enemy, ThunderFOOT's my friend, what happens when that friend turns on you? Because that person doesn't not only do they not share your ideals or your principles, they don't share your principled methodology either. And then that unprincipled use of force is going to turn on you. It'd be like if you hire the mafia to do something for you. Don't be too surprised when they come back and extort you. That's a little bit what it is. You have to be careful, dealing with bad means. And you can keep going down here. I just responded to what you said about a gun control issue. ThunderFOOT also used the video to kind of push this anti-gun narrative, which was really bizarre. I edited the videos. I treated Sargon and Sarkeesian the same. Deal with it. Well, the deal with it is, well, maybe I should reevaluate my original judgment of how you treated Anita Sarkeesian, because that's clearly what you're doing is wrong. Now, let me go ahead. There's lots more stuff here. You can go look at his Twitter if you want. But I just thought I'd show these because what it represents to me is a couple of things. And the first one is that he's engaging in non-arguments in order to avoid dealing with criticism. And if you go and you say, okay, well, maybe is this indicative? Is this something new that he's doing, or is it something that exists in the past? And if you go back and you look at a lot of those older videos, particularly the why do people hate feminists, you're going to see a lot of sophistry, and you're going to see a lot of really, really aggressive sort of character assassination type attacks on Anita Sarkeesian and others. And I'm not saying that those other people don't deserve it, or they don't deserve to have their ideas put into question, but using bad means like editing things together to try to make somebody look bad, that's not a good means. And I know that he was doing that in the feminist videos, and I kind of stopped watching them, partly because, when you first watch something and it appeals to your already set political leanings, right? Which is, to me, I'm not a feminist, and I really dislike a lot of the rhetoric that feminists use. And I'm like hyper aware of it, and it gets to me, it triggers me. When you have somebody just ripping them down, it's kind of like watching an Undoomed video. Like, Undoomed videos are super satisfying sometimes to watch, because it's just vitriolic, and sometimes you just kind of got to let that hate out of your heart. And that's kind of where it started. But as it went on, not only did I realize he was using a lot of sophist devices. He was using a lot of, not just straw man. He straw mans a lot of people, but other things like false motivation, where he's projecting onto people what they're feeling and why they're doing it, and all sorts of other things. And there's other logical fallacies that he used too. But he kept repeating like the same little clips over and over again, to the point where they got annoying and cringeworthy. This one where it's like, Bruce Wayne's cape is like designed to not show his butt, and then it's like, no, it's a high-tech Wayne Industry thing that lets him fly. And it was like in every video. After a while, like I watched a bunch of them in a row. I don't really know why. They started off satisfying, and then they get less satisfying as you go, to the point where you're like, dude, you're not really talking about anything anymore. And that's when I kind of started to like have the illusion was kind of being swept away from the eyes of ThunderFOOT, of my opinion of ThunderFOOT, and I kind of realized that he doesn't really engage with people with good methodology, and I'm really more interested in the good methodology than I am interested in the fact that you agree with me already or not. And that's something that started to feel last year, and it also, people are like, well, then you don't watch his little politics videos. He made some really weird like Brexit videos that were kind of very, self-serving about science research and stuff. And we watch him for his science debunking videos. Now, I mentioned Shane Killian. If you go look on his channel, there's a really extremely thorough multi-part debunking of ThunderFOOT's debunking of this thing called a hyperrail. And in it, basically, ThunderFOOT was either very ignorant as to what he was trying to debunk, or was actively being deceptive about the nature of this hyperloop test that was occurring, right? And he was using a lot of sophistry to try to kill the idea of this hyperloop in people's minds before they had an idea to evaluate it, including referring to all these teams that were designing the cars that would go in the hyperloop as students, and it's like, students have done amazing things. Just because somebody's a student doesn't mean anything. And the fact that he has a PhD, I encountered this a lot when I was in academia, is that if you were up in the higher echelons, it's like, well, he's just an undergrad. Well, he's good for an undergrad. It's like, well, is he? Of course, I taught music. Like, is he good or is he not good? Because it doesn't matter if he's 19. If he can shred your face off, I want him to be successful. I want to put him out there. I want it to be good. So just because somebody's a student doesn't really mean anything. They could be very, very knowledgeable and smart. Students have designed all kinds of incredible things. A lot of our medical research is done by graduate students, not by people out in the medical field. There's a huge amount of research in every field, actually, that's done at the graduate school level by students. And so that's an interesting little piece of sophistry he used, was an attempt to destroy somebody's credibility by saying that they aren't an authority. It's type of an argument from authority, an inversion of it. And I've done a video on that one as well. But anyway, Shane does a really, really good multi-part series where basically this was a test. This was not the test that ThunderFOOT makes it out to be. And he's either actively deceptive or he doesn't know what he's talking about, both of which are bad. Because if you're going to make a video debunking some piece of science or some piece of tech that you think is bad, then you should either know enough about it to debunk it, or number two, you should be completely honest about what you're seeing and what you're attempting to debunk. Otherwise, you're not being honest. Now, all of this adds into this old European proverb. You've heard it before in different forms. No one believes a liar when he tells the truth. When your credibility is destroyed, it takes years to build a reputation, and a reputation can be destroyed in moments. No one believes a liar when he tells the truth. Once people are onto your game and they realize that your methodology is about lying and being deceptive to try to prove a particular point, then there's going to be a taint on everything you do from then on. Not only certainly do I want to go back and reevaluate my opinion of Anita Sarkeesian, or at least my opinion of his videos on Anita Sarkeesian, but it makes me want to reevaluate everything I've ever watched from him, because that means if he lied here and he was deceptive here and he was using deceptive sophist devices here, and I remember them from the past, chances are like that's just his modus operandi. That's just what he does. And if that's just what he does, and you already agree with him on everything he does, then it's fine. But I think for those of us who are concerned with the means, which is a lot of my viewers who are interested in my like philosophy content or my skepticism content, then you have to really stop and think about whether that's a person who you want to devote your attention to, knowing that their claims, that you can't really trust the way that they're constructing their arguments and claims anymore, and whether they're misrepresenting people. And I guess that's all I have to say about that. That's an interesting lesson. It's a bit like if you ally with the Russians to beat the Nazis after the war, the Russians become your enemies. They turn on you with the help that you gave them. ThunderFOOT grew strong, destroying feminism. He grew very popular because there's a lot of anti-feminist sentiment out there. But once you decide that you're going to turn against those people, then all of a sudden you become very aware of their bad methods. Or like I said, it's kind of like hiring the mafia. It's great when you're not being extorted, but as soon as they start extorting you instead of the other business, then you kind of realize that it was probably a bad idea to begin with. So I appreciate you watching this. If you learn the lesson from this without having to interact with this situation, that's great. If you're aware of this situation, you've seen it unfolding, and now you know my opinion of it and my sort of take on it. I guess I stand with Sargon, and it's not because Sargon is a great guy. It's really just because his methodology is much closer to what I want from somebody who's going to talk about reality in YouTube. It's a better methodology, and it's the methodology that's much closer to the one I want to use and I want to idealize and I want to actually practice. So for me, that means I stand with Sargon, and it also means that it's kind of like the last nail in that ThunderFOOT coffin is that I can't really trust him on his science videos anymore. I can't really trust him on feminist videos based on what he said, that he does the same thing to Anita Sarkeesian that he did to Sargon of Akkad. Could I trust his creationist videos? I don't need to trust him because creationism is full of really bad arguments, so I don't need to. But you gotta You got to think about it from that perspective. I appreciate you watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. And please leave me your feelings about it down below if this interacted with you. And if you kind of did the self-reflection that I did and kind of realized that you have to be pretty critical of people that already agree with you, because the bad methodology will end up turning around on you and you'll be upset about it. So, yeah. Matribalism.